we talk about the casting a lot, and definitely a lot of the casting has sort of come from angles that we didn't expect. I really like, I think my favorite casting so far, besides Rue and Suresh, is Leven Rambin as Glimmer. She looks very right, in my opinion, for her part. And then Rue, her commercial reel that Meg was talking about, I really was struck by how she moves, very similar to how Rue is described as sort of being forward on her toes and like she's about to take flight, and she moves with the same kind of aesthetic that I was sort of pictured Rue as having. My feelings on the rest of the cast, I am one of the people who's disappointed that it's not more representative of people of color for the people who are from the theme. And that's not a slight against Jennifer in particular or Liam in particular or John C. Reilly. It's just something that really was important to me in the books, was all symbolism and the socio-political dynamics of Panem, and how the Hunger Games really are designed for the people who are in the less fortunate areas to have to take out more tesserae and be more likely to be sent into the arena. So I'm really hoping that we do see some more representation of people of color from other districts, and that it's not that Rue and Suresh are kind of the only not white people in the entire Hunger Games, because I think that would really kind of send some message that's opposite of the books itself. So that's really been my biggest thing with watching the casting happen. And since we didn't really get a ton of, representation of different nationalities in the casting of the kids, I'm kind of hoping that maybe we'll get some surprise castings in that way with the adults. Like, my personal Cinna that I really want to play Cinna is Lee Pace, but barring him, I kind of want someone like Taye Diggs to play Cinna. I think that'd be great.
Oh,
that's
Lee Pace
actually a great
awesome.
idea.
If anyone's seen Pushing Daisies, he was really great on that, I thought.
He's like the perfect Cinna in that. Like, Ned is Cinna. I just love him. I don't know. Yeah.
I've got to say, though, one thing I don't want to contest what you're saying, but I always, and this is just the way I read it, I never read there as being people in the theme as being anything but white. I just thought of them as more dark hair. That was honestly my interpretation the whole time. I don't know. How did everybody else feel about that? Am I alone?
Well, I mean, they're described as having olive-toned skin, which could, that doesn't necessarily indicate one specific race, but it also does not necessarily mean Caucasian either. It was very ambiguous, I thought. So I sort of pictured them as I don't know, just having more of a darker complexion, maybe sort of a Mediterranean look. But I think it depends a lot on the ethnicity that you personally identify with. I'm Caucasian, so I usually tend to see characters in my mind as being Caucasian, So I think it's, a very personal thing.
Well, I think race is such a difficult subject, too, because on the one hand, there's a part of you that wants to just throw it out the window and say, all right, let's get, a whole range of people to just be from District 12, and, people just deal with it because we wanted to have a racially diverse cast. But I think that's so hard in this movie because Suzanne Collins goes through so much trouble to single out how people look from each area. So, they're kind of, I think, hands tied behind their back a little bit with this,
I agree. I just feel like the Hunger Games, I think everybody's in agreement that the Hunger Games is not Twilight. And I don't think that you can cast it in such a way that ignores a lot of the political and social sort of heart behind the idea of the Hunger Games and behind the idea of the rebellion. And I'm not saying that that's a racial thing, because it's not. It's definitely not a race rebellion. It has nothing to do with it. But I do think that it is something that she describes. The way she describes there's a huge difference in the way that Katniss and Gale look from how Prim and Katniss's mother look. And I would have liked to have seen at least a little bit of that in the casting of that, Prim honestly does look more like Peeta and more like the Merchants, which her mother obviously was before she married into the scene, and how that affected their lives and how that affected their family and how it affects their need for tesserae and things like that. And I do think that it sends a bad message if the only people in the arena who are people of color is Ruin Thresh and they both die. So I just feel like that is not a part of
a little bit of a Richard Wright native son type of concept almost going on. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. Great point.